everyone, it's me Adam, and today we are going to talk about the furries of the world. We're going to take a look at how different cultures have their own takes within the furry fandom. Now, of course, this doesn't necessarily change the furry fandom to such an extent that it's basically a different fandom entirely. It's still the same fandom, but they do have a few key differences that give them their own unique cultural take. And how these takes have been. Today we're going to explore that. Now, before we begin, let's discuss the basics. What they all have in common. First off, the focus is still the same all around the world. Creatively expressing yourself, as in creative self-expression, and a creative form of escapism, while also socializing, which it will depend on which side of the furry fandom we're talking about a bit more. Let's start with where it began in the first place, which is the United States of America. Now, although the idea of anthropomorphic animal characters dates back centuries, like the lion mensch, for example, like it actually dates back centuries before our modern day countries existed. But our first modern day understanding of the furry fandom came to be in the United States of America back in 1980. Some claim 1970, even as early as 1960, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll go with 1980. The US is also where the very first furry convention was held, over in California. And after the internet became a widely accessible tool that almost every single household had access to, with exceptions of course, the furry fandom managed to spread even further and show itself more towards a global audience. And once the furry fandom spread around Europe, Germany was eventually able to make one of the biggest, if not, if I remember correctly, the biggest furry convention in the world. Now, when it comes to my own home, which is Britain, the British furry fandom is distinct due to its historical roots in British literature as well as media. It has a strong domestic convention scene, similarly to how it is in America and many other parts of the world, like Confuzzled, for example. And it has a unique culture influenced by early house cons and zines. While they share the same core elements with the other sides of the furry fandom, its local scene has developed unique traits, such as early emphasis on simpler costumes due to the limited access to fursuit makers, which, although it isn't as bad as it was back then, even today, there are very limited options when it comes to fursuit makers in the UK. Now, the historical and cultural influences would first off be with literary origins. The fandom has deep roots in British literature, including works like The Wind in the Willows, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Beatrix Potter's books. Early costume culture, which was before the mid-2000s, it was less common to see full fursuits, not just because of the cost of it, fursuits aren't exactly cheap, but also because of the limited availability of makers outside of the US. Many early British furries opted for simpler costumes like face paint and ears as a result of this. There is even a book related to this subject called Furtania. And although I haven't read it myself yet, I am planning on getting that book on my hands and starting to read it, because I am curious about fellow furries and their literature. I enjoy writing myself. Mind you, I'm not a creative writer, I'm a descriptive writer. I write about nature, ecology, zoology, and so on. So I'm not exactly a creative writer, but I do have a lot of love for writing in a general sense. So I would love to get my hands on this book and take a look at it. Now, when it comes to the differences it has from the American side of the furry fandom, for example, is its origins and history. The modern furry fandom originated in the US, as we talked about before, with the UK being one of the very first places outside of the US to hear about it and embrace it. The second is the scale of it. The US fandom is much, much larger, with the US having more events and states that are considered furry-centric. And the cultural influence-wise, the UK fandom has been influenced by both American fandoms as well as its own unique media and cultural context. When it comes to events, the UK has its own unique events, such as the Confuzzled convention, that have grown alongside their American counterparts. Although, as far as I am aware, in terms of which one is more popular, fur meets or fur cons, fur meets appear to be more popular as far as I can tell. Now, when it comes to the Chinese side of the furry fandom, it's very similar to Western ones. However, it differs in its recent growth, greater emphasis on community, and avoiding negative stereotypes, and a more reserved approach to the more sexual aspects of the fandom, where it's not absent, make no mistake, we're furries, we're all horny as fuck, but they are more, how do you say it? But they are more reserved in their approach and a bit more and less outward about it, which I actually kind of like myself. I myself am very much like that. This is where things get pretty interesting, in my opinion. China's furry fandom is very interesting. China's furry community didn't really take off until the 2010s, thanks to social media platforms like Weibo and Bilibili, but once it started, it blew up pretty fast. Chinese furries put a huge emphasis on digital art and animation. A lot of them are professional level artists who mix furry aesthetics with anime and or traditional Chinese art styles. You'll see dragon personas, fox spirits, and mystical creatures with stunning detail. And when I say dragon, I don't talk about the European understanding of a dragon, I'm talking about the Asian fluffy dragon, which is actually quite interesting to me. I like how, although they are the same thing, they're both dragons, their appearance is very unique to what location and culture they originate from. The European dragon is almost like a bit of a mutated dinosaur of sorts when you look at it. But the Chinese dragon has a lot of fluff on it, and it has a noodle like body, which again is pretty interesting to me. There is also a very big community driven energy there, but with a more organized and structured feel to it. Instead of massive conventions, they often have smaller, tight knit gatherings or online events. And because of internet restrictions, most of their fandom operates in its own online ecosystem, which is very different from the Western one. Basically, Chinese furries turned furry art into a legit art scene, which is, again, pretty cool and impressive. While younger generations in China have a very strong interest in the fandom, a significant cultural generational gap does appear to exist. And elder individuals often view furries in a more positive, animal loving light, surprisingly enough. The fandom has also been influenced by unique local concerns, such as controversy over a celebrity furries appearance in a game, which sparked worries about intellectual property, community integrity, and increased negative attention from younger and less mature audiences, which is a fair concern. Us furries over in the western side of the world have had to deal with this for such a long time, we've kind of just forgotten about it at this point, we don't even care anymore. Yeah, the Chinese side of the furry fandom is also incredibly creative. Now, let's get to Turkey, which is the second place that I call home. Just in case you don't know, I am half British, half Turkish myself, I'm mixed, and I absolutely and I have spent at least half of my life over here in Turkey, mainly for working as well as educational purposes. But for the most part, I've been in Turkey for long enough to discover that there are fellow furries here as well. However, it is much, much smaller than almost any other part of the furry fandom. It's very small, and there are a lot of reasons for this, which a friend of mine is actually going to help us understand with.
Hey everyone, it's me Adam, and today we are going to talk about the Turkish side of the furry fandom, just as we've talked about the other parts a moment ago. And with me, helping me here, is Text.
Hello!
Now, he will be speaking Turkish in this video, but I will go ahead and, translate him so that you can understand him as well. Şimdi, Furtext,
Evet.
Türkiye tarafındaki furry fandomu hakkında sence en büyük fark ne diğerlerine kıyasla?
Bana göre Türkiye fandomunu diğer ülkelere kıyasla fazla popüler olmaması. Çünkü diğer ülkelere baktığımız zaman furryler gayet bilindik. Hani biz sokakta bir furry desem bile diğer ülkelerde herkesin dikkatini çeker. Ama Türkiye'de bu gayet az. Genel olarak hani belirli şehirlerde diyelim. O da çok nadiren. Ama gün geçtikçe bunun sayısının arttığını görüyorum. Türk furrylerin gayet sayısı artıyor benim gözümde şu an.
Peki yeni Türk furryler olaraktan en büyük yaşayacakları sorunlar sence ne olur? Mesela örnek vereyim, bizim tarafında fandomu ilk yükseldiğinde oldukça herkes millet benim tuhaf olduğumu düşünecek veya büyük ihtimalle LGBTQ grubunun bir üyesi olduğum için bana şiddetli bakacak, kötü bakacak endişesini yaşamıştı. Sence Türk furry fandomu bu sorunu yaşar mı?
Bence büyük ihtimalle yaşar. Özellikle Türkiye gibi bu konularda özellikle LGBT başta gelmek üzere katı bir ülkede bence gayet zor bir şekilde yaşarlar. Ki Türk halkının, Türk insanların ne kadar ön yargılı ve yanlış bilgiye inandıklarını düşünürsek kafalarında furry eşittir LGBT diye düşünüp hani kafalarında saçma sapan sorunlar de çıkarabilirler. Öyle düşünüyorum.
Anlıyorum kesinlikle. Bu konuda oldukça zor günler yaşanabilir. Ancak Türk furrylere buradan sevgi ve saygılarımızı mutlaka gönderiyoruz. Hepiniz cansınız. Peki şöyle bir soru geldi aklıma. Şimdi bildiğin gibi furry fandomunda kurt ırkı oldukça genelde popüler olur.
Evet.
Kurt
Evet.
çok her yerde oluyor. Ama sence Türklerde bu daha da yüksek bir seviyeye gelir mi? Sonuçta milli hayvanlardan birisi. Kurt.
Bence-
Yanlış hatırlamıyorsam.
Bence gelir. Geleceğini düşünüyorum. Çünkü zaten Türkiye fandomu içerisindeki insanlara baktığımız zaman 10 tanesinden 7'si falan zaten kurt. Özellikle zaten Türklerin türeyiş destanına baktığımız zaman en başta kurtlar geliyor zaten. Hani buna bakarsak hani gayet ilham alıp gayet güzel personalar yapabilir bizim Türkler.
Evet kesinlikle. Peki şu anda bildiğim kadarıyla Türkiye'de hiçbir FurCon veya da Fur Meet official bir anlamda yok. Bu doğru mudur?
Şöyle diyelim, Furcon olarak yok ama furlerin girebileceği cosplay etkinlikleri olduğunu söyleyeyim.
Anladım. Yani Türkiye'de cosplayler arasında furryler çok uzaylı gibi olmuyor. Yani onlar da içeride oturabiliyor.
Evet.
Anladım. Peki şu anda izleyiciler arasında belki Türk ve furry olmasına rağmen bir türlü başka Türk furry ile tanışamayan, bulamayanlar vardır. Onlar için tavsiyen ne olur?
Onlar için tavsiyem gayet bulabilecekleri gayet güzel Discord sunucuları var. Discord sunucularına gelerek kendilerine gerçekten arkadaş diyebilecekleri furry dostlar edinebilirler. Bu konuda çok öneririm Discord'u kullanmayı. Eğer bir sunucu önerecek olursam benim uzun süredir içinde bulunduğum Furlight'ı önerebilirim.
Çok güzel. Çok teşekkür ederim bugün videoya katıldığın ve destek olduğun
Ben
için.
teşekkür ederim. Bu onuru sunduğun için ben size teşekkür ederim Kozmik Bey.
Ah, you goober, come here.
Nah.
Come here, you goober.
Ya.
Come here.
Cheese.
Meow, 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 meow. Ah, no, not the mac and cheese. Ah! God damn it, I got cheese again. And that's going to be it for this section of the video. Thank you very much for watching, viewers, and if any of you are Turkish and you would like to communicate with other fellow Turkish furries, well, as Fortex said, I will be leaving links to the Discord groups that we have been talking about in the description. You can come there and meet fellow Turkish furries for yourself. And if you are European, but you are interested in other sides of the furry fandom outside of Europe, you can also come and join. People here have pretty good English speaking skills, so they can speak English pretty well.
On the Korean side, it's a bit more quiet, but it is growing. South Korea, where the furry fandom is much smaller but super passionate, Korean furry culture is really influenced by anime, gaming, and webtoons.
근데 여기 있는 퍼리 중에 조금 제일 섹시한 것 같아요.
아, 감사합니다.
네. 핏책 한번 퀵 핏책. 코트 어디 거죠?
코트 30만 원짜리입니다.
30만 원. damn.
목걸이 2,000원짜리입니다.
비싼데요? 오케이. keep going.
상의랑 바지 합쳐서 10만 원입니다.
신발은요?
구두는 아버지께 물려받은 겁니다.
오케이. priceless. 헤드기어는요?
헤드는 선물로 받은 겁니다.
오. 근데 제가 보기에는 남자 아이돌보다 멋있는 것 같아요.
You'll notice the art has a very clean and expressive, as well as stylized look to it, like something straight out of a K-drama but with tails. But you also have those with fursuits making very nice little skits. There's one that I myself have seen fairly recently, and I'm absolutely I love it a lot. It's really nice. In fact, I'll post it right here so you can take a look at it. It's really nice. I like it. Something very cool that I've noticed is the Korean furry community blends the furry themes with mainstream pop culture. You'll be able to see furries mixing it with K-pop fans, aesthetics, or virtual idols. It's not as big or public as it is in the US or Europe or maybe even China when compared. but it is growing fairly fast. Artists on platforms like Twitter and Pixiv are getting international attention for their stunning artwork. The best way to describe the Korean furries, in my opinion, would be a small community with a big heart. They're fairly friendly as well. Their artistic creativity is genuinely impressive, and oftentimes they are connected to the global furry circles online as well. And yeah, that's going to be about it for today's video. This is the furry fandom and its various other cultural takes. And it's pretty interesting. I like this a lot. And I wanted to say thank you very much to Vertex for helping me out in the creation of this video and providing me his own takes, as well as, helping us understand the Turkish side of the furry fandom, which oftentimes is forgotten about because of how small it is. Really small. Before I end this video, if you happen to be a fellow furry from a different part of the world that is also beginning to interact with furries as well as adopting furry culture, feel free to tell the story yourself. Let us all learn from each other about how different cultures have their own unique little takes on the furry fandom. What are we similar at and what are we different in? But yeah, thank you very much for watching. And I will see you again later some other time. Goodbye.